Intensity is not a perfume.
It was a no-doubter.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We are up in the bird's nest here in the warehouse at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I'm Brendan Mortensen alongside Matt Bonaparte. Bones, you missed probably the best night at the ballpark last night. Orioles hosted a Bark in the Park event, maybe the best Simba Cam of the year, where instead of everybody holding up babies that they brought to the game, everybody held up dogs. Just a fantastic night.
That's regrettable that I missed it.
It is.
I wish I were here.
That's a huge miss from you.
These things happen. I do love dogs, so that's a huge miss from me.
Who doesn't?
People.
Who
there are
would-
people out there.
I don't trust those people.
I didn't say you should.
I don't trust them at all.
All right.
Because if there's a Bark in the Park event, you know I'm there. You know I'm there. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and you should be. I wish I saw that Simba Cam. It was better than Fuji's from the bullpen?
It might have been.
Wow.
It might have been the best Simba Cam, ever.
Wow, that
I mean, it was
considering
up there.
there's one in the Lion King, that's tough.
It was up there with Ben McDonald and Jim Palmer holding Kevin Brown up in the air from the broadcast booth. It was that
You're
level
hyping
of
it up.
quality. Yeah.
I'm going to have to go back and watch.
You might have to.
All right.
It was also a big night at Camden Yards because of the return of John Means. That's what we're going to be talking about today. John Means back on the mound for the Baltimore Orioles. Outside of what it means from a baseball perspective, just to start, it's a cool story overall. I mean, John
Any
Means,
comeback.
it's been a long time coming. We have not seen John Means on a big league mound since April of 2022. He was an all-star in 2019, the Orioles representative there. So just to see your all-star pitcher back on the mound, recovering from Tommy John surgery. We know that Tommy John has become more commonplace. It's not shocking to see a pitcher back and pitching well, as we saw John Means do last night after having Tommy John surgery. But it's still a very cool comeback story. We know how long the road to recovery is, especially this year with John Means, where he had some weird fluky stuff going on injury-wise with his back while he was trying to rehab. Just nice to see him back on the mound from a personal standpoint.
Absolutely. Any comeback, especially one from an injury that's going to take a long time like Tommy John does, it's good to see a guy back. And like you said, he had fluky injury stuff, and a lot of times that's what keeps ball players off the field for good. So it's good to see that he overcame a lot of that, all of that, and that he's back on the mound.
Yeah, so let's talk about what we saw last night. Final line is 5 innings of work, 3 earned runs, 4 hits. Didn't walk anybody, but only had 1 strikeout and allows 2 home runs on 75 pitches. I think he pitched a little bit better than his line would indicate. The mistake, quote-unquote, to Paul Goldschmidt on the home run in the first inning, I wouldn't really call it a mistake.
A foot above the zone.
It was a pitch that was elevated, but it was at Paul Goldschmidt's chin. So that's all right.
He's just Goldie.
Yeah, that's just Goldie.
I don't really count that as a huge mistake against John Means.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a solid pitch.
Right. Not a great pitch, I guess, because it's elevated and it's to a good power hitter.
It was out of the
Paul
zone. I mean,
Goldschmidt, but
what
it was
can you
out-
ask for?
Right. It was out of the zone. And then in the second inning, John Means loads the bases with nobody out. But there wasn't a hard hit ball that inning until Mason Wynn records an out.
Yeah.
Mason Wynn's liner to Cedric Mullins in center field was the hardest hit ball of the inning by far.
Yeah.
So John Means loads the bases without walking anybody, without giving up a lot of hard contact, and then he gets out of it, only allowing 1 earned run. So I think you take that as a win. And then gives up another solo home run to Palacios. It was a good inning, a good outing overall. I think Ben McDonald, was talking about the fact that it looked like pretty much the same John Means from seasons ago, which is definitely encouraging.
Yeah, not a guarantee at all.
So I think it was an encouraging start overall.
I agree. Just to go back to that second inning where he did load the bases, I always like to see that out of a guy when...
You like to see him load the bases?
Let me finish. I knew that was coming. I like to see him have an opportunity to work out of a jam, to see what it's going to look like when a guy comes back, is he going to be able to work out of a jam? Because for a starting pitcher, that's one of your biggest qualities, is your capability to work out of it when you're in the mud. And he did a really good job of that. Jordan Walker gets a sac fly, RBI, but that was the only thing that came of it. And that was incredibly encouraging for me to see from John Means in that second inning.
Yeah, Bill on Facebook commenting that the way he pitched last night doesn't really mean much. I disagree. I don't think you take the results and move forward with that. But I think it's absolutely indicative of what you can expect from John Means moving forward, how he feels physically. We didn't know what the fastball was going to look like. The fastball was down a few ticks in velocity in the minor leagues. It was down to, John Means was throwing it right around 92 miles an hour in the minors. Last night it was up to 94. That's definitely encouraging because the fastball was right around 94 a few years ago before the Tommy John surgery. So you weren't really sure what the velocity was going to look like. And again, the most important part of this start for me was seeing how far they let him go and how he felt physically after the game. And he only threw 75 pitches, which I think was interesting. There was a question when he came out in the fifth inning, he was at 75. Is he going to go back in for the sixth? And talking to John Means after the game, he said, yeah, I felt like I could have gone back out for the sixth. This is probably the best I've felt physically in a while, which is huge.
Yeah.
Because we have had the discussion on this show in the weeks leading up to John Means' return, knowing it was coming, seeing the rehab starts. He was only getting 5 innings of work at AAA Norfolk. His last 2 starts in AAA, he went 5 innings both times. He did get up to 86 pitches in one of those starts, but his last rehab start, he tossed 5 innings, only threw 67 pitches. So the plan was clearly, you're going to throw 5 innings, regardless of how many pitches you throw. Maybe that was just the plan last night as well. Just, you're going to throw 5 innings. If it takes you 50 pitches, you're going to throw 5 innings. If it takes you 85, it's going to be 5 innings either way. But the fact that he felt great physically afterwards and felt like he could have pitched into the 6th inning, I think is a really encouraging sign.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When a guy comes back from an injury like that and is feeling physically fit, that's a win. It's a huge, huge win because that's not always a guarantee. And for him to come back and offer a really sound start from an injury of that length, I think is huge for this team and going forward into fall baseball. Having a guy who's a veteran and has had prior success to come in and be back is so massive for them.
Yeah, so let's talk expectations here for John Means. As I mentioned, he hadn't pitched since April of 2022. He was an all-star back in 2019, and he started 26 games in 2021 with an ERA of 3.62. That 3.62 ERA would be the second best among starting pitchers on this team right now behind Kyle Bradish. It would be a better ERA than Tyler Wells, who had a 3.80 ERA in 21 games. And then if you're not counting Tyler Wells because he's not currently in the rotation, your second best starting pitcher ERA is Dean Kramer at a 4.25. So adding in somebody who has a track record of an ERA right around 3.60 is pretty solidly your second best starting pitcher in the rotation. And that's not to say that John Means is going to come back and be the exact same pitcher that he was in 2019 and in 2021. But again, he recorded right around a 3.60 ERA in those 2 full seasons. And you don't necessarily need it to be that, but even an ERA of like 4 or in the low 4s is still the second best starting pitcher ERA on this team. And again, as Ben McDonald said on MASN last night, it looked like the same John Means. Ben McDonald pretty much said the only difference he was seeing in John Means last night is that he wasn't really attacking right-handed pitchers with the fastball inside. That feels like a pretty small difference compared to what the differences could have been from John Means on the mound last night.
Threw a ton of changeups, 29 changeups to 26 fastballs.
This is pitch? Yeah.
This is pitch. So I see what Ben's talking about there. But to your point about whether or not he has to come back and, what he has to offer this rotation for him to be valuable, like, the bar is pretty low in that regard. He just has to come back and be able to give you 5 innings like he did last night because this offense is so darn good. 6th in the majors in runs scored this year, this offense.
Yeah.
So they're going to offer you support 9 times out of 10. And if you can go out there and give them 5 innings of 3 runs, there's most cases with this team, you're going to win the game. So if he can do that often and consistently, John Means is going to be incredibly effective for this team.
Yeah, and he filled up the strike zone.
Yeah.
55 pitches, 55 strikes on his 75 pitches.
Yeah.
That's really good. James McCann, after the game, again, was really impressed with his tempo, which is, kind of an underrated part of this, is that John Means, this is really his first exposure to the pitch clock.
Yeah.
Because John Means
I was thinking about that too last night.
Very underrated that
Yeah.
John Means did not get the exposure to that. I mean, I'm sure he was practicing it while he was rehabbing and things like that, but this was his first game with the pitch clock at the big league level, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest about, the game last night. John Means gives you 5 innings, 3 earned. The Orioles are facing Adam Wainwright, who, again, no disrespect to Adam Wainwright, he's one of the better pitchers of the last 20 years. Dude did not have the best ERA. So 5 innings.
He ain't having his best year. I'll tell you
He's
that
not.
much.
5 innings, 3 earned from John Means should probably win you that baseball game last night. And not going to knock the Orioles offense. They've been unbelievable over the last few weeks, and you're allowed to have a clunker here and there. But John Means very much gave you a chance to win that game.
Absolutely. And when I say 9 times out of 10, I think this was the one. Because usually this offense is going to go out there, and you can't win every game. It just can't happen.
Right.
So, don't lose your head over this. But, I mean, I think in most situations, they win games like these. Yeah, and that's why they have 90-plus wins.
You're going to have clunkers. But John Means gave them a chance to win the game. Going forward, I don't see any reason that John Means can't do this every 5th day. I don't know if John Means is going to be the same 3.60 ERA pitcher from a few seasons ago. Maybe that's not realistic to get him back up to major league speed and major league ready in the 4 or 5 starts he's going to get before the playoffs. He's probably going to get, 3 more starts?
Yeah.
I think 3 more starts before the playoffs.
Maybe less.
So it's probably not realistic to say, John Means, go give us 7 innings, 1 earned. We know that he has that in him, but I'm not expecting it this season. But I think what is realistic for John Means is that he can give you 5-6 innings, 85-plus pitches. His next start, I'd like to see him get stretched out to 85 pitches. Maybe the start after that, he gets up closer to 90. Again, he doesn't have to throw 110, but 85, 90 pitches in his next start, I think, could be a realistic expectation. Yeah,
and I think it should be. And he also, honestly, he came back at a pretty solid time to warm up for the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
You get a couple starts in, and hopefully, like you said, they stretch him out a little bit towards the end of this month and let him go what a normal length for him would have been a couple of seasons ago, and get him back to a spot where he feels like he's not even rehabbing anymore. He's just pitching again, because that is ultimately the goal with a guy like this, is to get him back into his mojo, his routine, and put him back to where he was before the injury even happened.
Yeah, but I think my biggest takeaway from last night is that John Means looks solid. Again, 5 innings, 3 earned runs is going to win you a lot of baseball games with how prolific this offense is. If he can do something along those lines for his next 3 starts before the playoffs, I'm feeling pretty solid about where John Means is heading into October.
As am I, 100%.
Let's talk October.
Okay.
Let's talk playoff rotation, because John Means coming back certainly changes the calculus here for the Orioles. Let's start at the top, and we will start with Kyle Bradish. I mean, at this point, he is the bona fide ace of the team. He has a 3.03 ERA through 26 games, 3rd best ERA in the American League, 6th best WHIP in the American League. I don't think there's a question that Kyle Bradish should start the first game of whatever playoff series you have.
I mean, he has to.
He has to.
I don't even think there's a question there. He
Yeah.
has been really just rock solid all year long. He's allowed 1 run or less in 11 of his 26 starts this year. Only 3 times throughout the season has he allowed more than 3 runs in a start.
It's really good.
He's had a fantastic season, Kyle Bradish. And when you say bona fide ace, I don't think a lot of people would have thought that coming into this year. I think everybody thought Kyle Gibson was going to kind of put the team on his back in that capacity, but it really has been Bradish. Like you said, the ERA that ranks towards the top in the AL, just behind Sonny Gray and Garrett Cole, and the WHIP as well, just outside the top 5. He has been everything and more for this team from the pitching staff.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a little while to be able to look at like the top 5 in ERA in baseball and not be like, Kyle Bradish?
Yeah, I agree.
Because we knew that Kyle Bradish had the potential to be really good. I don't know how many people thought that Kyle Bradish had the potential to have the 5th best ERA in baseball. Because at the top of the list right now, you have guys like Blake Snell, Garrett Cole, Sonny Gray, Luis Castillo. Those are all studs.
Yeah.
And we are used to them being studs. And then you also have like Justin Steele and Kyle Bradish, where next year, I don't think we're going to be surprised to see those guys at the top if they're able to repeat this kind of production. But right now, it's like, Justin Steele?
Yeah, the first
Kyle
year they
Bradish?
do it. Yeah, it's like, all right, how is this going to stick? Is the bubble going to pop kind of thing?
Yeah.
And for Bradish, it just hasn't. I feel like that's been the feeling around him all season is that, okay, he's been really, really good, but surely he'll have a bad start here and it'll all go downhill at some point. But it just hasn't. I mean, he has been rock solid all year long, and it's exactly what the Orioles have needed.
Yeah, we saw flashes of it a season ago. Kyle Bradish has been able to put it all together. I'm sure maybe that'll be an off-season show where we just do a deep dive into Kyle Bradish and go, how the heck did this happen? But for right now, you take it. Kyle Bradish looks like one of the best pitchers in the American League, and he's going to start game 1. He should start game 1 of whatever playoff series you have. Starting game 2 of whatever playoff series there is, I think I maybe lean Grayson Rodriguez.
I do
at
too.
this point. He looks like your solid number 2 right now. I think there's a case to be made for John Means, for Dean Kramer, who is really the only other starting pitcher in this rotation outside of Kyle Bradish, who has, been pitching for the entire season, been able to make starts and maintain a pretty solid ERA outside of Kyle Gibson. But Grayson Rodriguez, I think, is your number 2 right now. He has a 2.95 ERA since his return from Norfolk in mid-July. Opponents are hitting 225. On-base percentage is below 300. Grayson Rodriguez, we know, had this potential. Kyle Bradish, I think, came into the year and you were going, man, if Kyle Bradish turns into a number 2, number 3, I think you'd be thrilled with that. Grayson Rodriguez, you always knew had the potential to be one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. And right now, I mean, it seems like he is early on that trajectory of already being pretty dominant. But again, since his return from Norfolk, where Grayson Rodriguez was able to figure some things out, he's got a sub-3 ERA. That's a dude. I think he's your number 2.
And you talk about the numbers. He also has an opposing OPS of 612. Teams just aren't scoring off of him. He's fantastic. So, and if you're into the analytics, a FIP of 311, fielding independent pitching, that would put him 7th in the majors if it were on a full year scale.
Right.
He's been really, really good. And the stuff is finally there. He has, I think it's pretty safe to say he's just got the most gross stuff in this rotation. Like he's fantastic, and the way he dominates hitters is so fun to watch. And like you said, in the last 10 starts since coming back up into the majors, he's been so good, and it's been so fun to watch him because he's been pitching like an ace.
Right.
And I think you're right in saying that he's earned that number 2 spot in the rotation for the playoffs. I 100% agree. That's where I'd put him too.
After those 2, things get tricky.
Yeah.
Because you have a bunch of guys that have a case to be in the playoff rotation for one reason or another, and not a lot of guys that have given you a 100% solid, I need to be here sort of reason. So let's talk about the candidates. The reason that there is such a question after these 2 as well is because, let's say, hopefully this is not a discussion, because hopefully the Orioles win the division. Maybe they finish the season as the number 1 seed in the American League. That would be awesome. They don't have to worry about a wild card round. They don't have to worry about a 3-game series. They can prepare a rotation for up to a 5-game series, and we can talk about that scenario and that scenario only. But the Rays are not going away, and there is still a discussion about the fact of, I'm going to throw a hypothetical here at you, Bones.
Here we go.
Let's say the Orioles are in a wild card series. They don't end up taking home the AL East Division crown, and they need to play in a wild card series. Let's say that series goes to 3 games. Game 1, you start Kyle Bradish. Game 2, you start Grayson Rodriguez. I'm not even 100% sure that Grayson Rodriguez would get the ball in Game 2. He is still a rookie. He is still the youngest pitcher in this rotation, so maybe he doesn't, but in this hypothetical, we're giving the ball to who have been the 2 best pitchers over the last few months in Kyle Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez. Who gets the ball in Game 3, winner go home, wild card series?
For me, it's between Dean Kramer and John Means.
Yeah, I think I'm with you
there's
there.
a conversation for anybody else. Kramer, I mean, his numbers on the season as a whole have not been tremendous, but as of late, August and September, he's got a 2.97 ERA. His start on Monday night wasn't pretty, but he has been really solid as of late over the last month or so.
Yeah.
I think he could totally serve as your number 3, but I'm not super confident in him. In regard to Means, I guess I bring more confidence to the table with him just because I know the track record is there and that he has had success. Like you said, a 2019 All-Star and has mowed down hitters plenty in his career, while Kramer is a little bit more of an unproven guy. But he's played the whole season, and that's where the routine of it gets into my mind. And,
As has Kyle Gibson.
Yeah. Well, Gibson...
As has Jack Flaherty.
Yeah,
just
but
not for the Orioles.
Those numbers, they don't speak to me, all right? They just don't. I think I'm going to go with Dean Kramer here, though.
Okay.
Because also, in that scenario, I'd want to start the next series with John Means, and I'd be pretty happy about that. So I'd be comfortable giving the ball to Dean Kramer in a Game 3.
I think I would be comfortable giving the ball to Kramer as well, but if it's a winner-go-home Game 3, I think I give the ball to John Means. He has the pedigree. I know he only has...
It's such a toss-up.
It is. I know he only has 1 start so far in the big leagues, but he looked pretty good. He has had a lot of success in past seasons. Not a lot of these guys have playoff experience. If you want to go to somebody with playoff experience, you're looking at Jack Flaherty or you're looking at Kyle Gibson. But if I'm talking about who I want to give the ball to in a winner-go-home Game 3, I know John Means still needs to get built back up a little bit, and maybe he only gives you 5 innings of work in that game. But the Orioles' bullpen is also excellent. Yeah. Maybe you would rather go for somebody who gives you 5 innings, 2 earned, and then just get it to the bullpen rather than Dean Kramer, who has fluctuated a little bit more. We'll see. But as of right now, I think I give the ball to John Means.
Yeah, I mean, I can see arguments for both. I could totally see why Means should get the ball as well.
Yeah.
And that point totally stands and is absolutely valid, that in a winner-go-home, you want the guy that you have more confidence in, and I can see why that is John Means. But at the same time, I think Dean Kramer, in the last month or so, I think he might have earned it, too. He's pitched his butt off.
Yeah, he's been awesome. And so let's move away from the winner-go-home Game 3 hypothetical here and talk about if the Orioles are in the ALDS, a 5-game series here. For Game 3 and Game 4, I'm giving the ball to John Means and Dean Kramer in some sort of combination. Dean Kramer, as you mentioned, 29 starts this year, 4.25 ERA. The start against the Cardinals, not great, but before that, you mentioned he's been good over the last month or so. Had an ERA just over 2 in his 6 starts since the beginning of August before that start against St. Louis. You do just need to hope with Dean Kramer that you get the good Dean Kramer, who gives you 14 quality starts on the year. He has had 6 starts this year, allowing 5 or more earned runs. You hope you don't get 5 or more earned runs in a playoff start from Dean Kramer. And the last month or so has been a little bit more consistent. As I mentioned, it's been a really good month of August for Dean Kramer. But then you have a not great start against the Cardinals where it was very uncharacteristic. Everybody's allowed a blow-up start here and there. But Dean Kramer has had more than a few. And so it's a little bit rocky giving him the ball to, start in a playoff game just because you hope you get good Dean, right? You hope you're not getting the Dean Kramer that's allowing 5 earned runs in 6 starts this year.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no way of telling, of course. But I feel like you're in a situation there where you've built your rotation, you have to trust it. And you've got to throw out one of your best pitchers, and that's Dean Kramer, So you can't really shy away from him. It's where you get to the 5th spot that I think it gets super questionable.
Well, here's my question. Do you need to go to the 5th spot?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Because
you just run a 4-man.
Look at the ALDS games this year. I'm just going to run through the exact dates. If we're talking about the ALDS and a potential rotation here for the Orioles. ALDS game 1 is the 7th. That's Kyle Bradish. Game 2, the 8th. Let's say that's Grayson Rodriguez. Game 3 is the 10th. Let's say that's John Means. Game 4 is the 11th. Let's say that's Dean Kramer. Game 5 is the 13th. So Kyle Bradish pitched on the 7th.
He's got rest.
Let's give him off 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th.
5 days.
That's 5 days rest. I pitched Kyle Bradish on the 13th.
I would too.
Yeah.
100%. You're running a 4-man.
I think you run a 4-man.
Because I think what's weird is, there's a lot of people in the Kyle Gibson camp still.
Yeah, let's talk about Kyle Gibson. We are getting a lot of comments about Kyle Gibson on YouTube and on Facebook. Thank you for following along live as we have this discussion. Let's have the Kyle Gibson conversation because it is really weird. If you were talking about Dean Kramer and saying, he's allowed 5 earned runs in 6 of his starts this year, you're not sure exactly what Dean Kramer you're going to get. Kyle Gibson might be like the epitome of that for the Orioles this season. 29 starts with a 5.12 ERA. He's had a 7.32 ERA since the beginning of August. It's not a good ERA. He has also had some huge starts this year. He has 15 quality starts in his 29 outings. I'm just going to run through some starts that Kyle Gibson has had against really good lineups. 7 innings, 2 earned against the Rangers. 6 innings, 2 earned against the Rays. 7 innings, 1 earned against the Jays. 7 innings, no earned against the Yankees. 7 innings, 2 earned against the Twins. You get the point. More good starts against the Rays, Phillies, Jays, the Mets. 8 innings, 3 earned against the Blue Jays. That's a lot of good starts against a lot of good offenses.
Yes.
And then he has some bad starts.
He also gave up 7 to the White Sox.
Right.
So it's like, I don't even know how to feel.
Yeah.
In those, you said the 7.32 ERA. In that time, guys are hitting 3.19 against him. I think there's also something to be said about how you're pitching up until the playoffs,
Sure.
If you're really cold going into October, I'm not sure I'm comfortable giving you the ball. And that's kind of the situation that Kyle Gibson is in right now. But at the same time, like you said, he's a veteran. He has some experience. He's been on a lot of good teams. He's pitched against a lot of good teams this year and pitched really well against them.
Yeah.
It's hard not to think about whether or not he deserves it. He's got something like 15 quality starts this year.
Yeah, 15.
He's got plenty left in the tank. It's just a matter of whether or not you're confident enough that you're going to get it out of him in a playoff start. And I don't know that I am.
Yeah. He's an 11-year veteran with playoff experience. He has 1 career playoff start, though. He has 1 start in 2019 with the Twins, started 1 game in the ALDS against the Yankees, pitched just 1 inning, 3 earned runs. Excuse me, that wasn't even a start. Kyle Gibson doesn't have a playoff start in his career. He has been coming out of the bullpen in the postseason, came out of the bullpen for the Phillies last year, didn't allow a run in 2 innings of postseason work a season ago. Kyle Gibson is so important to this clubhouse. He is incredibly important to this team. He has eaten a lot of innings this season. I think fans are really split on whether or not they want to see Kyle Gibson start a playoff game and if Kyle Gibson will start a playoff game. I mean, friend of the show, Connor Newcomb, tweeted from the Lockdown Orioles account that he still gives Kyle Gibson the ball in the playoffs and got cooked.
He got cooked.
He got cooked. on the artist formerly known as Twitter.com. So, I don't know. I genuinely don't know whether Kyle Gibson is going to get the ball or not in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's unclear.
It's really unclear. I mean, the quality starts are there. Again, I rattled off how many good starts he has had against really good teams, but for as many great starts as Kyle Gibson has had this year, he has had some pretty not good starts.
Yeah, and the two guys that he's maybe competing with for that fifth spot, Flaherty and Irvin, I'm not sure touch him. But Cole Irvin's got a weird conversation. I will say that. I think you'll see him out of the bullpen strictly.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
He does have a weird conversation. Say they need like an opener for a game or something. Like I could see them trotting out Cole Irvin.
Sure, I could see that. I don't think Cole Irvin gets the kind of start where you go, hey, Cole, give me 6 innings.
No, I don't think so either.
But Cole Irvin, if you wanted to go bullpen game, I don't really know why they would, because I think at this point you have a pretty solid 4-man rotation, if not 5. I don't know if Cole Irvin at any point is going to be needed as an opener, but I could certainly see it.
But
if push comes to shove.
He's played well against good teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had that start in August 12th against the Mariners. 2 hits, no runs, and a 1-0 win. I mean, he was great in that game, went 5 innings.
Yeah.
So he's pitched well. I don't think he'll get the ball for a start, and I don't think he should, but he's another arm that you have that would be competing with Kyle Gibson for that spot like Jack Flaherty would.
Right. And I mean, let's say you play the Mariners in your first game. I mean, Kyle Gibson went 5 1/3, 12 hits, 9 earned against the Mariners.
Hard to ignore that.
Yeah.
It's difficult to ignore.
Let's talk about Jack Flaherty. Another really weird discussion because Jack Flaherty has not put up the numbers that he has hoped in an Orioles uniform. 6 starts with Baltimore, ERA over 7. You traded for Jack Flaherty at the deadline with the hopes that Jack Flaherty was going to be in your playoff rotation. I think that was the expectation with Jack Flaherty. Whether you're going 5-man, 4-man, whatever it may be, the hope was that Jack Flaherty was going to be that guy for you.
Absolutely.
In the playoffs. That's the reason you gave up Cesar Prieto, who was mashing in AAA Norfolk. I think he was hitting like 330 at that point. That's the reason you gave up Drew Rom, who was probably a top 5 pitching prospect in the organization and had shown some good flashes in AAA. He's currently at the majors. He's actually pitching against the Orioles tonight. And Jack Flaherty has not shown you enough in an Orioles uniform to inspire a ton of confidence that he should get the ball for a playoff start. However, if you want to talk about pedigree, and you want to talk about somebody that you know has the potential to go out and dominate a game, you're looking at Jack Flaherty. He has the most playoff experience on this team with a 3.52 ERA in his playoff career. His last playoff start came in 2020, where against the Padres, he got 1 start in the wild card series, went 6 innings, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts. He is the only person in this rotation right now that has gotten it done in the playoffs. But he has not gotten it done in an Orioles uniform right now. So it's a weird conversation.
If I were Brandon Hyde, I don't think with good conscience I could give Jack Flaherty the ball in a huge start. I just don't. I mean, the numbers have just not been good. And a lot of the times I'm somebody to say, okay, let's throw the numbers out and look at what he's done. But it's only 6 starts. You know, the sample size is what it is, and he just has not been strong in those 6 starts. An ERA above 7, a whip above 1.6. I mean, the hits per 9 is 11.5, 2 home runs per 9. I just don't think he could. And I know that he's been in, I think, a championship series, a division series, and a wild card.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he's the guy this year. And maybe that, I mean, I don't want to say that the trade didn't work out, but I think you just have to move on with what you have.
Yeah, I mean, in the 2019 NLDS, you mentioned it too. 2 starts in that series gives you 13 innings, 16 strikeouts, 4 earned runs, 2 walks. That's outstanding.
That's elite. Yeah.
That's outstanding.
But in 2019.
In 2019?
Not.
Yeah. But we're talking about John Means, who was good in 2019 and 2021.
Well, he was good last night, too.
We're looking at past seasons, too.
I just don't think
he was good last night.
I just don't think 2019 Jack Flaherty's walking through that door.
What if Jack Flaherty, again, we're still a few weeks removed from the playoffs here. This conversation could change in a few weeks, and I'm sure we will talk about it again down the line as we do our playoff shows. What if Jack Flaherty gives you 3 good outings heading into the playoffs? What if Kyle Gibson
good?
gives
Define
you...
good.
What if in his next start, Jack Flaherty goes 6 innings, 3 earned, 7 strikeouts? Because we know Jack Flaherty can strike guys out.
What about the next one?
5 innings, 2 earned, 5 strikeouts, 3 walks.
That's not so promising.
I don't know. What if over the next 3 starts, Jack Flaherty is just solid?
Then he'd have a conversation for it.
You give him the ball because of the playoff pedigree? I think there's a possibility.
In Game 5? Instead of Bradish?
No, probably not.
Yeah, you're not. No, you're not.
Game 4?
No. I'll give it to John Means or Dean Kramer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm leaving Jack Flash off.
I'm not even saying that I would. I'm throwing stuff
You're playing
out.
devil's
I'm seeing
advocate. I
what
like
sticks.
that out of you.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's solid. It's Bradish, Gray Rod, Dean, and then Means.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Then you flip.
I probably flip Means and Dean. But again, we'll see how this conversation changes over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys might get 3 more starts. And let's say Kyle Gibson ends the year with 18 quality starts. He gives you 3 more to end the season, and he seems like a hot hand going into the playoffs. I mean, shoot, Kyle Gibson could get game 2.
Yeah, it would be real. Then the conversation gets so much more difficult.
Yeah.
If he goes out there and plays really well in his last few starts of the year.
Yeah. Well, that's a weird conversation, too, because, do you just go with the veterans over Grayson Rodriguez? I don't think I wouldn't. But
No.
do you go with veterans over Grayson Rodriguez?
I don't. Grayson Rodriguez, you need him.
Do you go with guys that have pitched the entire season over John Means?
No, I don't do that either. Although
I don't
will
either.
say, I think it's incredibly dependent on how John Means plays. If John Means goes and gets blown up in the next couple starts, I think the conversation around him is wildly different.
Not anticipating that.
I don't think
But
it's going to
possible.
happen. But if it did, the conversation becomes a lot different than it is now.
Right.
So there's that.
We will be having this conversation again as we lead into the playoffs. As of right now, we're thinking playoffs. Maybe we just do a show for every playoff game.
Tell us if you'd like that.
Let us
We need
know.
some feedback.
If you would like to come hang out, do a little game preview, let us know. Because Matt Bonaparte and I, we will be here. For every Orioles home playoff game, we will be here. And we are looking forward to seeing a packed Camden Yards. Regardless of who gets the ball, it is going to be a very, very exciting time to be an Orioles fan. I am really looking forward to the next few weeks. Really looking forward to this weekend. If you can make it to Camden Yards for this series against the Rays, whew, that's going to be a series.
Playoff-like atmosphere of this series, I'm anticipating.
That's the playoffs.
Yeah.
I know there's a week after this, a week plus after this
Huge
Rays series where, you are on the road facing some teams, but this series against the Rays is a playoff series. It could very well determine the division. As of right now, the Orioles have a 3-game lead over the Tampa Bay Rays. This weekend is going to be massive. You have the Adam Jones ceremony on Friday. It's going to be a really fun time at Camden Yards.
I'm pretty amped for the energy. There's nothing like Camden Yards when it's bumping.
Yeah.
I love it. It's fantastic.
And, I mean, you've got the pitching matchups, too. I mean, Grayson Rodriguez against Tyler Glass now.
It's going to be some good stuff.
Whew.
It's going to be awesome.
If you can get to Camden Yards, this series against the Rays is the time to do it. And in the meantime, make sure you're checking out the Bird's Nest. You can follow along with us live on Facebook and YouTube, 11 a.m. every week, or you can catch us after the fact if I remember to post it on Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts and digital shows, you can find the Bird's Nest. Got a lot of comments from you guys today. Thank you so much for hanging out. We hope we will see you again next week. He is Matt Bonaparte. I am Brendan Mortensen. Big thanks to Amy Jennings behind the scenes. We'll catch you next time.